What is language
So,
puritanism?
linguistic puritanism is simply, I call it the reverse Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. So, Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, a very famous linguistic theory, says that the language shapes the way we think. In simple words, language defines our worldview. Linguistic puritanism is the worldview defines the language too. The conservatives see the language differently. Globalists see it very differently. Nationalists see it very differently. Medieval peasants saw it very differently. Our larger worldview defines the language. So in this case, for example, Hindi and Urdu, these both languages birthed out of one single language, and they have a name for it. Linguists call it the Hindustani language, the common lingua franca of South Asia. So the Hindus and Muslim nationalist movement diverged, so the language diverged. So it is the same language. Muslims prioritize the lexical arsenal from the Muslim history and the Muslim resources, and the Hindus prioritize mostly words came from Sanskrit. In Urdu, most words come from Arabic and Persian. So the same sentence in Hindi, you just switch the word. For example, the Prime Minister word, you take it from the Persian, it becomes Urdu. You remove that and take it from the Sanskrit, it becomes Hindi. So the syntax is same. And these kind of, in the West, the nationalist movement were very different, but the rest of the world very different. My larger argument is that each society has its own evolutionary path, right? And most of the emerging markets are on a very different trajectory, and the languages developed very differently, especially the relationship with technology. And the technologies came from the outside. Cars came from televisions, radios came from outside. And especially around the technology, language developed as people adopted the words as such with their own accent. So when the Puritans tried to prescribe a language, and they tried to come up with bizarre words, that was never going to work. And by the way, it's not just technology. This phenomenon is works on a larger scale. The institute that I described in my article as well, it's a premium linguistic institute. It has published like dozens, even hundreds of specific glossaries for specific purposes, but nobody uses those words in everyday language. They have a specific glossary for the office terms. Nobody uses those terms. They have specific glossary for journalists. Nobody uses those words. So it is a larger phenomenon, but in the case of tech, it became more. For example, the local apps or the local ecosystem just follows the big tech.
Yeah.
Because if my Windows interface is in English and most of the users are used to that, so local apps, although they could come up with very good localized versions, local apps, local websites, but they don't do that because the foundation, that's why I use the word landlord and tenant. Being a tenant, you can't do much. You can probably paint your walls. So the big tech had the control from the start on the ecosystem, but unfortunately that went wrong, and the entire ecosystem then developed around that mistake.